Hello everybody and welcome to Bude. Now today I'm going to be travelling from Bridgwater all the way to Penzance. This is going to be a little bit like a bonus adventure, as in a couple of months time, exactly a year after I went from Bridgwater to London by local bus, I am planning on doing another adventure just like that. However, first of all, I am getting the bus from Bude into Bridgwater to officially start my journey. That will be the same bus that I take all the way to Taunton, where our first connection was. Here I am arriving into Bridgwater bus station, where the journey officially began. I couldn't do my intro here in Bridgwater like I did in the London video because of the lack of buses on a Saturday morning on the section of the first bus 21 route between Bridgwater and Burnham-on-Sea. Just like on a weekday, there are plenty of morning Saturday services between Bridgwater and Taunton, but unlike on weekdays, even though the weekday early morning services aren't exactly great, there is a lack of buses that run beyond Bridgwater towards Burnham-on-Sea on a Saturday morning. So if you work anywhere apart from Bridgwater or Burnham-on-Sea, you're pretty much completely screwed. And even then, when you're coming into Bridgwater, it doesn't get in until after 8 o'clock, so even then it's probably not that useful. As I leave Bridgwater bus station, we pass the first West of England 375 service, which heads from here towards Wales and then continues all the way to Bristol. This was the first bus of the day that I took when I travelled from Bridgwater to London. On that day I had an MMC. Today it was just a standard Enviro 400.
This is the 21A towards Castle Way.
Here I am passing through Monkton Heathfield on the approach into Taunton. The history of bus services in this area, especially with the 21 and 21A services, is extremely complicated, but at the moment, the 21A, which is the bus I'm currently on, serves the older and more traditional part of Monkton Heathfield, whilst the 21 service passes through the bus gate, new housing estate, and the area by West Monkton Primary School, known as Britain's Ash. Sometime around COVID, there was no 21A service, and the 21 just ran straight through via Britain's Ash. And at some stage, quite recent I think, just after COVID or just before COVID, I can't quite remember, the number 2 service, which doesn't even exist anymore, but used to serve the Priorswood area of Taunton, was extended to the Britain's Ash area, and all 21A services ran via Monkton Heathfield or used the bus gate, not using the estate. Here I am in Taunton town centre around the parade area, which was where the old number 2 and 2A bus services, which at one time did run all the way to Britain's Ash near Monkton Heathfield, departed from. Nowadays the number 2 doesn't even exist anymore and has been absorbed into the number 1 service, which serves Wellsprings and Priorswood, pretty much the whole north of Taunton. Here I am arriving into Taunton Castle Way, which is located right next to Castle Green, Taunton Castle itself, and the Mecca Bingo Hall, and is located just around the corner from the old bus station, which is currently being redeveloped, though not much progress has actually been made on the bus station itself. Most long-distance bus services, such as the 21 and 21A services, as well as the 28 service just arriving here, depart from Castleway, but there are a few exceptions where bus services, such as the 54 to Yeovil or the 30 to Charlton Axminster, depart from the Parade, located about a 2-minute walk away. Here is a right GB kite arriving into Castleway here in Taunton on the 28 service. After having a relatively quick look around Taunton this morning after having to get some supplies, here I am arriving back at Castleway to get on my next bus service, which would be the First Bus Somerset X22 service, and just like the 21A service earlier, would be formed by another one of the Yutong U11 DTs currently operating from First Bus's Taunton depot on Hamilton Road. After departing Castleway here in Taunton, most bus services that depart from Castleway turn left and head back into the town centre, then onwards out of Taunton to their respective destinations. But the 22 series of buses, including the X22 to Tiverton, turns right and heads immediately along the Wellington Road before heading out of town towards, you guessed it, Wellington. Here I am passing the County Hall. This is currently where National Express coach services depart from until Taunton bus station is refurbished. After that, local bus services that depart from Castleway, such as the X22 I'm currently on, will move to Taunton bus station, and the National Express coaches will move to Castleway, where the X22 and other local bus services depart from. As I leave the boundary of Taunton and enter the Somerset countryside, here I am at the relatively new Orchard Grove Park and Bus, which is Taunton's third park and ride, but unlike the other two park and rides, it will not be served by the designated park and ride service, and instead the First Bus 22 series of services will call here, but not other bus services that also run along this corridor, such as the Stagecoach 20, which will just operate straight by. The Orchard Grove Park and Bus is so new that the park and ride facility hasn't even opened yet, and the stop is just being served for local residents at the nearby Orchard Grove housing estate for the time being. Here I am passing through the relatively posh town of Wellington, which is home to a private school and a Waitrose, which does make it extremely posh. The town itself does get a relatively good bus service, but this is where the 22 series of services start to split off from each other. Just after this main stop in the town centre, the 22A service heads right towards Tonedale, which is where the service then ends, and the 22 and X22 services then head on towards Rockwell Green. After Rockwell Green, it is only the X22 that keeps going towards Tiverton. There is also the 22C, but this only runs on college days and heads off towards Okehampton and splits off from the X22 closer to Willand. Here I am branching off of the A38, which links up with the M5 not far from here, closer to Tiverton, to head along the country lanes towards Okehampton and Willand.
The next stop is Ashley Close.
Here I am passing through the village of Okehampton before reaching the main stop in the village, which is by the Ostler Inn. When the X22 buses usually come through Okehampton, this is also a problem with the 22C when it runs on college days. It often has to negotiate the narrow lane through the village and the parked cars, which make it extremely awkward to bring a full-size double-decker electric bus down this tiny narrow street. Here I am passing the Stagecoach 1A service heading towards Exeter in Willand. Here I am arriving into Tiverton bus station. Although most of the services at the moment are operated by Stagecoach Southwest, come the new year when the timetable changes happen, a lot of these services in this area, especially the town services, are going to be taken over and operated by Go Ahead, who will use it under the Dartline brand. However, Service 55, which is my next service and will take me to Exeter, will continue to be operated by Stagecoach, and thus you may still find the odd Enviro 400 Trident just like I did on this service. Although I didn't manage to get the back seat on this Trident, it was still a lovely ride. Here I am leaving Tiverton bus station on this ADL Enviro 400 heading on the 55 service towards Exeter. This is the more direct service to Exeter, however occasionally the number 1A service heads up to Tiverton from Okehampton. However, this service takes over an hour to get to Exeter, compared to the 40 minutes or thereabouts that the 55 service takes.
I just need a microphone to show them later. Okay.
Here I am in Exeter city centre. As much as I like the city centre here, one increasing problem with the bus system here is that when the buses travel down the High Street and Sidwell Street, as well as other streets leading off of Sidwell Street in the city centre, is that pedestrians seem to think they can walk out into the road whenever they like. Just because there are no cars travelling up and down the street doesn't mean that you can just walk out into the road. Buses, if anything, are more dangerous than cars since they take longer to stop and they have other passengers on board as well. After having a look around the main shops here in Exeter city centre, which is about a 5-minute walk away from the bus station, here I am on my next service to take me across to Okehampton. This is the 6A service and usually has a single decker Enviro 300 or Enviro 200 MMC, both ADL vehicles along the route. But today there was a Scania N230UD ADL Enviro 400 along the route, along with the number 6 service, which is designed to connect with the 6A in Okehampton. Now from here on out you may be wondering, why didn't I just head down towards Plymouth and try and roughly follow the railway line into Cornwall? Well, I could do that as far as Liskeard, but by the time I got down to Liskeard, the very infrequent 55 service, which heads across to Bodmin, had actually, well, not finished, but there was a massive gap at that time in the afternoon in the service, and therefore I'd be waiting ages in Liskeard, and that is something I really didn't want to do. So therefore I had to head across to Okehampton, but you may be even more puzzled by my next move, as I do not take a direct route across to Cornwall from Okehampton. Anyway, that's enough about my route. Here I am heading towards Okehampton and passing by Exeter Central Railway Station. And here I am passing by Exeter St David's Railway Station, which is the more major station in the city, even though Exeter Central is closer to the city centre. After travelling along the A30 corridor from Exeter, here I am arriving into Okehampton, which gets a surprising number of bus services. Now my next bus will be the number 6 service. Like I said earlier, this service is designed to connect with the 6A to and from Exeter, which will take me across to Bude via Holwell Junction and Holsworthy, which gets a surprising number of bus services as well, albeit they don't run very frequently at all. Now you may be wondering why I'm heading all the way across to Bude. Now the logical route from here would be to take the 306 service across to Launceston, then a service across to Camelford, I can't remember what number it is, and then take the 95 service down to Wadebridge and continue on with the normal route from Wadebridge. However, the 306 service doesn't run very often from Okehampton, and it would mean I have an hour's wait in Okehampton, which doesn't matter too much, but then I'd have ages and ages, I can't remember exactly how long, but at least a good hour, if not more than an hour, in Launceston. And by the time I get to Camelford, I will actually arrive into Penzance when I actually get there later than what I would if I went all the way across to Bude and then took the 95 service all the way down to Wadebridge on that mammoth journey. So that is what I'm going to do anyway. Take the 6 across to Bude and then the 95 on that mammoth journey all the way down to Wadebridge. So here I am in Okehampton, just heading through the town and onto the railway station. Here I am arriving at Okehampton railway station, where I would change onto the 6 service to take me towards Bude. Here at Okehampton railway station you can change onto a number of other bus services as well as the rail service heading back towards Exeter. Here I am leaving Okehampton railway station on another Scania Enviro 400. These regularly operate on the number 6 service, and it takes just over an hour to get to Bude. Here I am passing through Horwell Junction, which is where independent bus operator MD coaches are based, and therefore a lot of bus services operated by them arrive and depart from Horwell Junction, albeit a lot of them are shopper buses and only run once or twice a week and serve tiny little villages. I wouldn't mind doing a few of them, but they're not very useful as they only run a couple of times a week. Here I am passing through Holsworthy, which is one of the larger towns in this region of Devon, and here you can change for a number of other bus services, including the 85 service, which goes all the way from Barnstaple and Bedford down to Launceston and Tavistock. So in theory, if you change to Tavistock, you could go from Barnstaple all the way to Plymouth by local bus, which seems like a great adventure that maybe I should do one day. Here I am arriving into the Strand in Bude, which is Bude's main bus station and is where most, if not all of the bus services arrive and depart from. Here you can change for a number of other, mainly infrequent Go Cornwall and Stagecoach services. Here is the Scania N230UD ADL Enviro 400 that I arrived in on from Okehampton, heading off to a nearby coach park to park up with a few other vehicles operated by Go Cornwall Bus. Here is a Go Cornwall Bus ADL Enviro 200 arriving on the 95 service from Wadebridge and Camelford, which will be my next service. Luckily I had an Enviro 200 MMC for my next service, which is a little bit better than an Enviro 200 like this one, which I tend to find rather boring, albeit they're definitely better than getting a right street light on this kind of journey. Here is the Stagecoach Southwest Scania Enviro 400 arriving back in to take passengers back on the 6th service towards Holsworthy and Okehampton. Here is my next bus now at Bude Strand, and this would be my first of 2 Go Cornwall bus services. This is the 95 service operated by ADL Enviro 200 MMC and will take me on the just over 2-hour journey all the way down to Wadebridge via Camelford. This service, although it takes ages, is extremely scenic and well worth the trip, albeit it was a little bit crazy, to be honest with you, having an MMC for 2 hours. Just before I left, another Go Cornwall bus MMC arrived and departed on the 219 service heading towards Heartland, or you can connect on a bus towards Barnstaple. Here I am passing through Crackington Haven, which is one of the more remote and lesser known places on this part of the Cornish coast. As I head further into Cornwall, you can see that the weather is starting to turn for the worse. Here I am passing through Boscastle, which is known for its rich history and lovely scenery, and the 2004 flood that the village was hit with on the 16th of August 2004. The village was pretty much destroyed, although saying that, a lot of the historic buildings did remain intact. Here I am in Camelford, which is the last major calling point along the 95 service until we reach Wadebridge. Here you can change for the 97 service towards Launceston, the 55 service towards Bodmin and Liskeard, which is the service I would have caught if it was more frequent between Bodmin and Liskeard, and other local bus services which roughly follow the 95 all the way to Wadebridge. Here I am arriving into Wadebridge bus station, which is where the 95 service terminates and is just a short walk away from Wadebridge town centre, which the bus also serves 1 or 2 stops before it reaches the bus station. Here you can change for buses all the way back to Bodmin or for buses towards Padstow, and I think there is a couple of buses that head towards Newquay. After the bus to Padstow pulled into Wadebridge bus station, here I am leaving Wadebridge bus station on the 94 service heading towards Truro, which would be my final Go Cornwall bus of the trip and was formed by the exact same vehicle as the bus from Bude to Wadebridge, so this was nearly 4 hours on an MMC. Lovely. Here I am arriving into Newquay Airport, where you can change for other local bus services and obviously flights, though very few of them, from the airport itself, which I believe is one of the only airports in Cornwall, albeit there are a few other much smaller airports, including Land's End Airport I think, although that could just have something to do with the RAF. I'm not too sure on airports in this area. We sat at Newquay Airport for a few minutes as we had recently passed through some flood water which made some alarms go off, so therefore the bus had to sit here for a few minutes, but in the end we set off back towards St Culla Major and then towards Tresillian and Truro, only around 15 minutes late, which I was quite surprised about. Here I am passing a broken down Go Cornwall bus, ADL Enviro 400 City on the outskirts of Truro. These used to operate on the 21 and 21A services in Plymouth before the electric Wright Street decks entered service, and therefore before the electric street decks entered service in Plymouth, the 21 and 21A services were branded as the Spark services. Here I am arriving into Truro bus station only about 10 minutes behind schedule, which I thought was quite good considering that we were nearly 20 minutes late at one point and we departed Newquay Airport 15 minutes late and we were held up at St Culla Major after that. You can change here at Truro bus station for coach services and other local bus services that head right across Cornwall. As well as that, the Truro Park and Ride service, known as Park for Truro, departs just down the road on the main street near the Haven House bus stop, and Truro railway station is not that far away, although you can catch the T1 bus service as well as other services to get there. Here is my next bus arriving into Truro bus station, which is operated by First Bus Cornwall or First Colonel. and was wearing the standard First Chrono green livery with, just like the buses of Somerset livery, I much prefer to the newer First Ultraviolet livery, which a few buses do wear down here in Cornwall. This bus had arrived in from Falmouth and would be taking me back to Penryn campus. Here is a very nice sounding ADL Enviro 400 arriving into Truro bus station on a Go Cornwall bus service, even though it still wears the old Plymouth City bus livery, which is an absolute classic and used to be seen everywhere in Plymouth. However, some buses now wear the Go Cornwall bus livery and newer versions of the Plymouth City bus livery. Here I am boarding the U1 service heading towards Penryn campus. At the Penryn campus, the bus continues on to Penryn itself and then into Falmouth, where you can change for other local bus services as well as long distance services such as the U4.
It's not bad. How's it sound? How does it compare to the rest of the week? Small. It is. Even now, we've got 3,500 capacity. If we ever do go up to the next division up, we'll have to increase the capacity by to 5,000. It's not bad for what to do. Version weekend, we've just broken the record. For the last 12 years, it's been.
Here I am arriving into Penryn campus, where I can change onto the U4 service, which will take me on the final leg of the journey to Penzance. This service operates via Helston, and in Helston it actually got extremely busy, so between Helston and Penzance I couldn't really film too much. During the day you can also change for a number of other bus services as well as the U2, which will take you up to Camborne or Redruth. I'm sorry, I can't remember which one it is. Here is the bus leaving Penryn campus heading towards Falmouth. It was very strange being at a university campus at 8 o'clock at night when there is absolutely nobody about. Unlike all of the other bus stations I visited, both in Devon and Cornwall, there were not very good facilities here. Hardly any benches, the shelters were completely beaten up, and there were no destination boards, which I was very surprised about, considering even Wadebridge bus station had a destination board, which I really wasn't expecting. Anyway, I didn't have to wait here too long, only about 10 or 15 minutes, and then the U4 came round the bend and took me towards Penzance. This was another first bus ADL Enviro 400 MMC, but this time was wearing the Tinner livery, which used to be the brand used for services between Penzance or St Ives and Truro. Here I am passing through Helston town centre, where the bus got rather busy. As much as it was nice to see the evening buses being used, I was quite surprised at how many passengers were using the evening service. As in Somerset, not many passengers use the evening services. I've never seen a bus this full at this time of night.
70. Lisa, do you know Pig Pony Club?
No.
I loved it. Around the jaw. Captain Satan.
Here I am passing Penzance railway station as I enter the town centre. Here I am arriving into Penzance bus station. Now whilst this was the end of my adventure from Bridgwater to Penzance by local bus, this would not be the last time I travel on a bus in Cornwall. Since first bus are leaving Cornwall in February, in the fact that I will not be able to head down there for the final couple of days of first bus operating in Cornwall, I took the opportunity whilst I was down here to travel on the 1A service between Penzance and Land's End on the Sunday, as I was filming this on the Saturday, after I arrived into Penzance. So here I am at Penzance bus station the next day, waiting for the first bus 1A service. Although 8:40 is rather early on a Sunday morning, there are a few buses that departed Penzance before mine. For example, this 17 bus service departed a couple minutes before mine. I think it was around 8:30 in the morning, which is quite early. Now, although I debated getting on the first one service to Land's End of the day, which left at 7:27 in the morning, I'm quite glad I waited for the 8:40, as it was formed by an ex-Doncaster Volvo B90L Right Eclipse Gemini 2. I don't believe there are any original Right Eclipse Geminis left in Cornwall, whether they're Volvo B9 or B7TL, but there are still a few Right Gemini 2s with the Volvo B90L engine, which was fantastic to see, and I've wanted to get on a few of these down in Cornwall for quite a long time now, as there is no future for them at the moment. I'm unsure what's going to happen to them. Here I am arriving into Okehampton. This is quite a nice little village and isn't far from the sea. As well as this, there is a nice little bus terminus where most of the buses stop, if they even serve the village. Unfortunately, both of the times that I've been here on the bus, I've been here before when the service was called the Land's End Coaster, and I've never seen anybody actually use the bus service here, which is a shame because the bus shelter and bus facilities are quite nice and are very good for a village of its size. Here I am now at Land's End. As much as I think the bus is useful for the villages around Penzance and the villages between Penzance and Land's End, I think the bus coming to Land's End itself at this time in the morning, especially on a Sunday, is a little bit pointless. Hence why there was absolutely nobody apart from me on the bus. I didn't have too long here though, as the bus only had a 15-minute turnaround, though it was definitely enough time here, and I wouldn't want any more at about 9:30 on a Sunday morning. Here I am coming into Senon Cove. Although it is extremely isolated and there is only 1 or 2 roads in and out of the village, it does get quite a good bus service. If this village was in Somerset, there's a big possibility that this village might have not even gotten a bus service in the first place. The scenery around here is also extremely nice, and in the summer it does get quite busy down this end of the county. Here I am passing through St Barrion once again, as I pass through here, heading towards Land's End as well, just before we branched off heading towards Porthcurno. Here I am passing another ex-Doncaster Volvo V90L right eclipse Gemini 2, this time on the ordinary 1 service heading towards Land's End. I'm unsure what the difference is between the 1 and 1A services. The chances are is that they take different routes. Here I am passing through Newlyn, which is the final destination before Penzance. Here we link up with the M6, previously known as the Mousehole service, which links Mousehole, Newlyn and Penzance together and operates alongside the 1 and 1A services between Newlyn and Penzance. The M6 currently operates with Mercedes-Benz Sprinter minibuses, however it used to operate with much more characterful Optare Solos, which also wore a much nicer livery than the current Mousehole livery. After passing the lovely Penzance railway station, I arrive into the much more modern but still quite nice Penzance bus station. Although there aren't too many buses here on a Sunday, as you can see, there are many more buses that arrive and depart from this bus station on a weekday. Although the bus station is currently being refurbished and having new pavement and road surfaces added, the bus station is quite nice and it is well used by the locals. Anyway, thank you very much for watching this video, and I'm very sorry but there won't be any Cornish videos for quite a while. But please just feel free to scroll through my YouTube channel and have a look at some previous Cornwall videos, as I do like filming the buses down here, and I will see you in the next one for another great adventure. Bye everyone, and Merry Christmas!